Hey guys, it's Gary here for a little legal tip on are you unknowingly causing a delay? In real estate, everybody's job is to try to get the matter closed. It's what you want to do. That's what we want to do. It's what your lender wants to do. Nobody gets paid until it gets closed. Your buyer's not satisfied till it's closed. Your seller's not happy till it's closed. So there's certain things along the transaction, as I said in the write-up below, that it's like dominoes. If these things aren't done in time frames that they need to be done, then it can cause a delay down the line. So for instance, if the appraisal is never ordered on the transaction and they realize that the day before the closing, that's going to put a whole delay on everything else happening because that has to be done in a time frame. Same thing like a title search. If it's not done, not ordered until the day before closing, it's going to cause a delay in the closing. So certain things have to happen along the way. So a couple of things that have to happen along the way, whether you're on the buyer side or the seller side, is the closing attorney's got to get information. And I had this discussion with an agent yesterday who was just being obstinate about it, not wanting to give us any of his seller information until due diligence is done. Well, that just doesn't make any sense, okay? Because when you look at a due diligence provision in Colombia where you have the 10-day business due diligence, that by the time you add that to the seller's 5 business days to respond, that can be 20 or 25 days. In the Greenville market and the market else around the country and state that uses the state contract, you'll have written in due diligence, could be 15, 20, 30 days. And so when you have these long periods of due diligence and then a closing period that's not going to be much long after that, it starts causing delays, particularly with the seller. And I have a lot, this agent's arguing that, well, you don't need the sellers until the last minute. It doesn't take but a second to get a payoff. Well, that's not true anymore. There's 5, 6, 7 lenders right now that are at a minimum 5 days to get a payoff. And if you're doing with USDA and some of these other government loans, we've had them take as long as 4, 5, and 6 weeks to get payoffs, particularly when they have your client may have had some type of modification done during COVID, or they may have had some type of forbearance during COVID. All of that is causing delay. So if you want to make sure that your seller, as you're representing a seller, you want to make sure that their closing goes on time, is not delayed, then you need to make sure that your seller is giving that information to the law firm. I don't understand what the matter is of providing that information to the day you sign a contract or waiting 10 or 15 or 20 days. It's irrelevant. If the closing doesn't occur because the buyer's back out in due diligence, all that information is just destroyed anyway. It's all kept securely in the law firm. So it's not as if there's any risk at that point. So bottom line is, if you want to make sure your closing is going to go on time, make sure your seller understands the need to provide the payoff information so we're not delaying closing. We actually had 2 closings delayed last month where you had, it took over 6 weeks to get payoffs from the government agency. We called and called and called, and they're like, we'll get to it when we want to get to it. We're shorthanded because of COVID was always the answer we got. On the buyer side, there's information you need from the buyer, including who their lender is going to be, how they're going to hold title, do they want survey? And right now we're seeing when people will not return that information, and then the buyer showing up a day, 2, 3 days before closing going, hey, I want a survey. Surveys right now are just as hard to get as appraisals. So they're taking 10, 11, 12, 14 days. So when your buyer doesn't have that chance to get the appraisal, it may affect them at closing. So the best thing you can do is make sure your client understands that everything's a domino right now, and everything's got to get done quickly and ordered quickly. So if they're buyers, they need to give all the information in the engagement letter to the attorney as quick as possible. If they're a seller, they need to provide all their seller information so that if there is a modification, if there is a forbearance, if they're dealing with a state housing loan or other type of loan that will take longer than the normal 3, 4, 5 days, then we need that. Same thing with homeowners associations. Not all these homeowners associations are handled by these big, large groups. Some of them are handled by the local guy down the street who might be on vacation for 2 weeks. So we need to go ahead and be getting all that information as well. So hopefully that'll save y'all from having closings delayed. I hope everybody has a wonderful weekend. Don't forget the podcast, which I think is over there. And y'all like it, share it, and subscribe to it. Y'all take care and have a good weekend. Hopefully we'll have all this cleaned up by next video.